Get her!
The Ghostbusters franchise explored. Our obsession with the paranormal has led to the creation of several gruesome, horrifying, yet hilarious ghosts on screen and print for decades. Casper the Friendly Ghost, Nearly Headless Nick, the one-time Scooby-Doo had a blanket on his face, but no ghost story has received the kind of transcendental popularity that 1984's Ghostbuster had.
Oh no, mother puss bucket.
Dan Aykroyd's pen and Ivan Reitman's vision breathed life into this electric sci-fi comedy that has since become the standard that horror-based comedies are measured against.
5 for 5. You can't see these, can you?
No.
You're not cheating me, are you?
No, I swear, they're just coming.
So many things about the first movie have since become iconic, from phrases like "Who will you call?" and "Dogs and cats living together," mass hysteria, to the Ectomobile, which clearly inspired by Dr. Emmett Brown's DeLorean time machine. Ghostbusters has achieved cult status.
Free. Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. Enough!
Almost 4 decades after its release, it lives on in the form of multi-billion-dollar franchises that covers every imaginable media domain. Millions of fans are still charged up on their proton packs and throng to conventions to show their appreciation for the impact that this hilarious piece of cinema had on their lives.
Why?
It would be bad.
I'm fuzzy on the whole good-bad thing.
The Ghostbusters universe spreads across multiple genres of entertainment. Ghostbusters found its way to the small screen with ABC's animated series, The Real Ghostbusters, 1986, and BKN's animated series, The Extreme Ghostbusters, in 1997, and the cinematic sequel, Ghostbusters 2, also directed by Ivan Reitman, came out in 1989, following by an array of video games, from Ghostbusters from Commodore 64 to LEGO Dimensions for PS4 and Xbox One. While a third of the movie was planned, it never came to fruition. Now we got the 2016 reboot instead. Now Ghostbusters looks to make its return in earnest, with Ghostbusters Afterlife scheduled to release in 2021. Ivan Reiter is on production for this one, and has promised that this movie will give the franchise back to the fans. With November 19th approaching soon, we at Marvelous Videos would be thinking it's a good idea to delve deep into the ectoplasmic pool of joy and entertainment that is the Ghostbusters franchise.
Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Ready! Let's show this prehistoric bitch how we do things downtown.
They're here to save the world. Ghostbusters 1984. Peter Venkman, Bill Murray, Raymond Stantz, Dan Aykroyd, and Egon Spengler, Harold Ramis, are parapsychologists from Columbia University with more than a passing interest in the paranormal. They believe ghosts are real beings and are determined to prove that they are correct.
What has that got to do with it?
Back off, man. I'm a scientist.
However, an encounter with the monstrous ghost at the New York Public Library leads them to losing their jobs. Our trio of misfits now decide to fight ghosts for a living instead.
Are you troubled by strange noises in the middle of the night? If the answer is yes, then don't wait another minute. Pick up your phone and call the professionals.
Now called the Ghostbusters, they operate out of a disused, rundown firehouse and developed advanced and bizarre technology to combat their ectoplasmic foes. Their first capture takes place at a Sedgwick hotel, and as paranormal activity keeps rising in New York, so does their fame.
We came, we saw, we kicked its ass. Did you see it? What is it?
Venkman tries to pursue Dana Barnett, one of their retainers, and competes with their neighbor Louise for her affection. They hire a fourth member, Winston Zeddemore, Ernie Hudson, to keep up with the sudden boom in paranormal activity.
Repeaters.
This is Winston Zeddemore. He's here about the job.
Beautiful, you're hired. Race.
Ghostbusters' real trial arrives in the form of Zuul and Vinz, demigods and spirit entities that threaten to unleash a terrible evil on Earth from a different dimension. They target Dana and Louise as their vessels, possessing them and attempting to perform some kind of ritual, but the Ghostbusters manage to keep them apart. However, when things go awry, when EPA lawyer Walter Peck, William Atherton, visits our dynamic quartet and accidentally sets all the captured ghosts free, as a result, Vinz is able to catch up with Zuul and summon their leader, Gozer, the Gozerian, who ends up starting to destroy New York City. It's up to the Ghostbusters to save the world from this supernatural threat.
Nobody choose anything! Did you choose anything?
No!
Mine is totally blank.
It's surprising that Ghostbusters plays out as well as it does, because before the movie came out, Dan Aykroyd had to rewrite the script multiple times. His original script had a decidedly darker, more grounded tone with an emphasis on emphatic storytelling, and not comedy per se. However, when he pitched the idea to Ivan Reitman, realizing the budget for the original script would cost around $300 million to produce, and encouraged Aykroyd to revise the story. Aykroyd and Ramis rewrote the film to resemble a sort of teenage group of misfits on an adventure vibe that was sprinkled with a heavy dose of borderline adult comedy.
Is this true?
Yes, it's true. This man has no dick.
Being regulars on the sketch comedy show Saturday Night Live, the pair saw it as an opportunity to combine Aykroyd's interest in the supernatural and scientific theories from the time with a bunch of unbridled tummy-tickling zingers, fit for audiences of all ages. As part of the promotional campaign, the studio released the Ghostbusters commercial from the film with a 1-800 number that would allow people to actually call it. They would be informed that the Ghostbusters are currently on a mission by the voice of Murray and Aykroyd for weeks. The call-in number received thousands of phone calls around the clock.
What happened? Are you okay?
He slimed me.
That's great! Actual physical.
Aykroyd envisioned the original cast as having fellow SNL member John Belushi playing Venkman and Eddie Murphy rounding out the quartet as Zedmore. Unfortunately, John Belushi passed away before the filming even began, and Eddie Murphy turned down the role in favor of his Beverly Hills Cops. This resulted in Bill Murray being cast as Venkman and Zedmore's role being rewritten to come halfway into the story.
Ray, when someone asks you if you're a god, you say yes!
While these actors are comedy veterans, character actors like Sigourney Weaver and William Atherton got to show off their comedic chops in the movie too. Weaver, who was known for a serious actor for her prominence in the genre of drama, actually started doing comedy, as well as being delighted to be able to showcase that side of her in the movie. At one point during the audition, she got on all fours and started acting like a dog, which convinced Reitman to hire her and might have inspired a certain scene from the movie.
Building or something with flames coming out of it, and there were creatures writhing around, and they were growling and
Ghostbusters is an adorable car crash of a film that throws everything against the wall and hopes it sticks. Wildly enough, it does. Blending science fiction, mysticism, and comedy is often tricky, but Ghostbusters uses the right amount of crap science to sell itself without being taken too seriously. The negatively charged ectoplasm bodies of the Ghost V/S, the positively charged the proton packs of the Ghostbusters, even the crossing of the streams makes sense to set up as the movie's Chekhov's gun. And while the ghosts themselves are hilariously designed, the entire film rides on the shoulders of excellent improvisational comedy.
Why worry? Each of us is wearing an unlicensed nuclear accelerator on his back.
The Ghostbusters script can only be described as notes, because the cast of comics on set managed to improvise almost every joke, dialogue, and punchline that made it into the film. From Spangler's defense for trying to drill into Venkman's head, that would have worked if you hadn't stopped me, to the entire scene of Louise mingling with his party guests, all of it was ad-libbed on set. Most of Bill Murray's lines are ad-libs as well. Why else would Venkman exclaim, "Nice shooting, Tex"?
Tex.
Manhattan is, for all intents and purposes, the fifth Ghostbuster, and the interplay between the SNL comics and New York in general is what first drew audiences to the film.
Gozer the Gozerian? Good evening.
And who can forget where Gozer the Gozerian finally emerged? We weren't there to see it, but we imagine peals of laughter coming out of the theater as this god of destruction lays waste, quote-unquote, to New York in the form of a giant Stay Puft Marshmallow mascot. From the moment it opens, that haunting introduction, to the time we see Venkman tip the doorman at the end, there's not one moment of monotony in this film. From top to bottom, Ghostbusters plays like a hilarious fever dream with one of the best theme songs any franchise has ever had.
2 in the box.
Ready to go.
We be fast and
They be slow.
Be ready to believe us, Ghostbusters 2, 1989. 5 years after saving New York from the evil marshmallow monster Gozer, the Ghostbusters have been put out of business. They were sued by the state for immense property damage and were barred from investigating supernatural events. The gang is scattered. Ray is an occult bookstore owner and works a side job with Zedmore as the world's worst children entertainer. Spangler is experimenting with emotions, and Venkman is the host of a TV talk show about psychics.
Give me Ira.
Hairless pets. Weird. Until then?
Dana has a baby now, but it's her ex's, not Venkman's. Turns out they broke up. One day, when she's taking her son, Oscar, on a stroll, his baby stroller moves by itself and stops in the middle of a busy intersection, threatening his life and convincing her that ghosts are back. She contacts the Ghostbusters, while her boss, Janosch, plans to use Oscar as a vessel for the 17th century sorcerer, Vigo.
Evil?
Find me a child that I might live again.
As the gang excavates the site, they come across a mysterious slime taking over New York's underground railways. The slime attacks them when they take a sample, and they barely escape. But they're soon arrested for investigating paranormal activity.
It's a one-shot deal.
Objection, Your Honor.
What?
He's leading the witness.
Sustained.
Give me a break. We're both lawyers.
At the hearing, the slime manifests 2 ghosts, and the Ghostbusters make a deal with the authorities. They'll capture the ghosts if they're set free. After restarting their business, they figure out that the slime is a product of the negative emotions of New Yorkers and is being manipulated by Vigo. The gang loads up as New York City streets fill up with the slime for their final showdown. They reanimate the Statue of Liberty with positively charged slime and proceed to rescue Dana and Oscar while taking down Vigo once and for all. Ghostbusters had a very stop-start production phase for several reasons, the most publicized being actor Bill Murray's reluctance to do sequels. Murray stated in multiple interviews that he would not be returning as Venkman, and at one point a replacement was penciled in, but he ended up joining the cast after Aykroyd and Ramis picked up screenwriting duties.
Well, I know I'm just asking for the big hurt, but I thought I'd give us one more chance.
What's more, the movie ended up conducting several reshoots after initial screen tests, which muddied the waters further. Unlike the previous films, which saw the cast shoot scenes without permits, the project was wholeheartedly supported by the city's authorities, who granted them permission to film at Manhattan's 2nd Avenue at a time when Soviet Union Premier Mikhail Gorbachev was visiting the city. Filming wrapped up quicker than the first project as well, taking about half the time as compared to the original Ghostbusters movie. This project contains several references to the first movie and the extended Ghostbusters universe, including the animated cartoons. Slimer Aykroyd's tribute to the late John Belushi was officially introduced as the Ghostbusters pet in Ghostbusters 2, something that he had been only shown on the animated series The Real Ghostbusters so far. The scene with the possessed coat was actually supposed to feature in the first film during a fashion show, but ended up getting repurposed due to time constraints. Ghostbusters 2 featured a whopping 200 special effects sequence and ended up being at a budget of $30 to $40 million. Where Ghostbusters broke new ground in cinema and comedy, Ghostbusters 2 just sort of existed. This movie suffered from a seemingly endless bout of rewriting and reshooting entire chunks of the script. In April 2021, in an interview, Bill Murray claimed that the movie's plot had changed so much over the course of its development that ultimately it became something that the original cast hadn't signed up for. Ghostbusters 2 played off of the affiliated universe a bit too much, trying to cater to its younger audience. While the special effects were impressive for the time, the overall story followed a similar formula as the first film. That being said, this movie lets its characters breathe a bit more. Murray's Venkman is still a resident wisecrack of the group, busting out one-liners like no one's business, though he isn't as prominent as you'd expect, which lets the other comics flex their funny muscles.
I'm a man. I'm sensitive. I need to feel loved. I need to be desired.
This is especially true for Raimi's Spengler, who in many ways holds the film together. It's nice to see the Second City spirit hasn't left him, and Aykroyd, who play off of each other's sense for improvisational comedy and create some of the most memorable moments of the film. Just like the original film, Ghostbusters 2 is a car crash as well, albeit less noisy and more of a gentle thump than a crash. We must admit, when Venkman wills the Statue of Liberty to life with the power of love, we burst out laughing. Ghostbusters 2 isn't a bad film by any means, it's just there. The comedy that made the first film so endearing was still there, but that's about it, which left the viewers and the cast disappointed. Ghostbusters 2 wasn't as successful as the first film either, grossing about $60 million lesser than the first time, and the franchise's future seemed uncertain for a long time.
Say hello to my little...
Ghostbusters' unmade third movie. No, we're not talking about the 2016 Melissa McCarthy starring reboot, we're talking about an earnest second sequel. Ghostbusters 2 might have not won over the critics, but the franchise had become so big that a third movie seemed almost inevitable.
Your name?
His name is Oscar.
Named after a hot dog. You poor man. You poor.
After all, the real Ghostbusters aired for 4 years and captivated the minds of an entire generation of young viewers, and merchandise from the franchise has always been high in demand. Aykroyd did develop a script for the sequel, but while the studio was interested, the cast was not. Dubbed Ghostbusters 3 Hellbent, it would have been seen as the cast transported into a hellish alternate timeline of Manhattan called Manhattan. Manhattan would look a lot like Manhattan in its structure, but nothing like it in design. Aykroyd legitimately imagined hell on Earth, transforming the landscape itself into resembling our understanding of eternal damnation. The movie would have not seen the original Ghostbusters expand into a full-fledged organization, complete with a fleet of ectomobiles and everything. The OG squad would have to face the evil doppelganger versions of themselves, and the final showdown would be with the devil himself, Lucifer. This never came to pass. However, as the budget demand for an ambitious project such as this would have been obscene, and toning things down just made the project sound asinine. For instance, in one revision, Manhattan subjugated its residents to damnation by gridlocking them in traffic. This, and mostly budget cuts, derailed the Hellbent version of the sequel. And other titles like Ghostbusters The Bright and the Best and Ghostbusters Alive Again would focus on the more new generation of Busters. This idea was first planted in Hellbent, but bloomed in these iterations. The Bright and the Best would have seen a new generation of Ghostbusters tackle a scientific causational event that can only be understood from their perspective, effectively passing the torch to them.
Moving? He is!
Who are you going to call?
Ghostbuster!
Alive Again would have seen Peter's son become a Ghostbuster, following the premise of a changing of the guard for the franchise. Aykroyd pursued this sequel till the 2010s came around, but to no avail. A sequel did arrive in the 90s, but it was for the animated series. The year-long Extreme Ghostbusters saw a fresh face take over the mantle of Ghostbusters. With Spengler as their mentor, this animated series gave us a taste of the future and the Ghostbusters franchise, and may be what inspired the upcoming installment in its cinematic universe.
It has a gunner seat?
Ghostbusters Afterlife 2021. It's been over 5 years since we saw the red slash across a cartoon ghost logo, or 30, if you are to believe Paul Rudd's character from the trailer. Ghostbusters Afterlife was unveiled in 2019, with a trailer that is in equal parts intriguing and exciting. If you've been keeping up with any news about video games, you'll know that recently the iconic hack-and-slash series God of War was reimagined in a way that was never done before. God of War 2018 was both a sequel and a reboot for the franchise. We followed our beloved bloodthirsty war-crazed Spartan, Kratos, into the realms of Norse mythology and parenthood. The game continued the story of Kratos and introduced his son, Atreus, in a way that the game follows the journey of Kratos and Atreus exploring a new generation of godhood while coexisting with the old. Afterlife looks like it's going to be on a similar path. The film will follow the story of Callie Spengler, Egon's daughter, and her children Phoebe and Trevor. They're evicted from their home and move to Oklahoma to live in their grandpa's home, and soon realize that their family history is steeped more in mystery than they could have imagined. They learn that the small town has been at the site of frequent unexplained earthquakes. These earthquakes, not understood in scientific terms by anyone who studies them, pique the children's interest, and with the help of their teacher, Chad, the forever young Paul Rudd, they begin getting to the core of the mystery. Towards the end of the trailer, we see these children watching the original Ghostbusters commercial on YouTube, and enact the series-defining phrase themselves, when they call the number on the screen and someone picks up and says, "We're not in business."
Ghostbusters, we're ready to believe you!
We're closed.
Ghostbusters Afterlife is like a blend between the visual storytelling of Stranger Things, no, we don't say this just because of Finn Wolfhard, and the gameplay narrative of God of War 2018. Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, and Ernie Hudson are set to reprise their roles as the original Ghostbusters and will pass the torch to a younger generation, possibly led by Spengler's grandchildren. The movie seems to be drawing from every piece of media in the franchise. Extreme Ghostbusters premise, crossed with the ambitious special effects of Hellbent with a cameo, or rather cameos, from legendary Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Dan Aykroyd stated in an interview once that there was no point in making this film if the script wasn't perfect. considering the fact that the notoriously sequel-averse Bill Murray readily agreed to star in the film. If we had to guess, we'd say that Reitman will be finally able to close out the original quartet story in a triumphant fashion, handing over the reins to his son Jason, who is directing the film's Ghostbusters Afterlife, hitting theaters on November 19th. And if you've noticed some strange activity occurring in that one isolated warehouse near your locality, you know whom to call soon.
And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.
This is Peter Venkman saying, see you then.